that doesn't play all that well.
It's a little bit of magical thinking.
And that's just showing me that you're kind of checking off boxes.
Those are 3 different AdComs who will tell you everything you're doing wrong. Over the last 7 years, I've helped premeds get into their dream medical schools like UCSF and UCLA. And they did it by avoiding these 5 misconceptions. Misconception number 1, medical schools will want to see it. If you look at any accepted medical school's application, you'll find that they did community service. So you should do community service too, right?
There's a whole set of applications where people have met all of the criteria. And when we read those applications, we say, what we often write in our notes is, this application has kind of a checkbox feel, which means like, oh, they told me I have to do some community service. Okay. All right, let me do this. Let me do this year.
Yeah.
I'll join this organization or whatever. So that doesn't play all that well.
Now, as a former premed, this is extremely frustrating. So am I supposed to do community service or not?
The most important thing is that you do what you are excited about, not what you think is going to look good.
That's the difference between the soup kitchen volunteering experience that every premed does and the summer youth basketball camp coaching that you love to do.
We think the most valuable experiences are those that are valuable to the applicants.
The larger point is that there are very few things that medical schools want to see, and you can name them literally on one hand. Strong stats, extracurriculars you clearly care about, impact in those activities, and a narrative that makes sense. That's it. That's all they want. And the best way to see how other premeds have done it is to read real applications. We have 8 full AMCAS applications that have gone into schools like UCSF, UCSD, and my own UCLA application is on there. And every time we review another application, like Sam, who got into Kaiser this cycle, we add it to the application database so that you can see what is working right now. Over 11,400 premeds are part of our community. To join, click the application database link in the description box below now. Misconception number 2, all scribing is made equal. Now we know that we shouldn't be a patient transporter just because every premed does it and medical schools want to see it. We know now they don't care.
And you're not going to have a lot of exposure there other than you've found the most efficient way of wheeling them, perhaps.
And so we evolve a bit. We know that many premeds scribe, and we've done our due diligence. Scribing is a solid extracurricular because it's an active form of understanding the physician-patient relationship.
One of the best ways you can do that is to become a scribe. Observe both the doctor and the patient and how they interact.
It's interesting you say that, because I've heard some admissions officers don't necessarily put the same emphasis on being a scribe, that they view it more as you're just transcribing things, you're just typing things, and you're not actually getting a sense of the role.
Wait, what? Did you hear that? Isn't it interesting how 2 premeds can have the same exact scribing experience and have different results? So let's dig even deeper and understand the 2 modifiers that make or break every extracurricular. Scribe A clocks in, does a great job, clocks out. Scribe B has become the head scribe. She created the literal handbook that onboards new scribes, and she manages scribe recruitment for the clinic. Scribe B has the first modifier, impact, and so her scribing stands out more. Now, let's raise Scribe A to the same level of impact as Scribe B. They have the same exact leadership role, and they are both co-heads of the scribing department at a cardiology clinic. Outside of the clinic though, Scribe A also volunteers at the local soup kitchen and is the treasurer of a public policy club on campus. I want you to be the AdCom. Can you picture Scribe A at your medical school? Now, I want you to meet Scribe B. Outside of the cardiology clinic, she does graduate level research on cardiac stem cell differentiation. She started an organization that screens community members for clots in their arteries. Immediately, you can see Scribe B crystal clear on your medical school campus. She's a student leader of the cardiology interest group. And you already want to introduce her to Dr. Stefan, who does clinical research in cardiology. The second modifier is context. AdComs are trying to understand who you will be as a medical student. If you have 2 extracurriculars, A and B, and contextually they're thematically aligned, this is when you get that 1 + 1 = 3 effect, and you stand out more by doing the same or less amount of work. And it's this attention to detail that separates premeds who become doctors from those who do not. And if you're applying to medical school in the coming year or two, you do not want to make the wrong decisions. Our Pre-Med Catalyst students that submit their applications on time have a 100% acceptance rate. And that's more than double the national average. And our results are because we work so closely with students. In fact, we can only take 4 students per month until we're full. If you'd be interested in earning full ride scholarships to Kaiser or interviewing at places like Mayo, Cornell, Harvard, Stanford, then book a free strategy call down below in the link in our description box now. Misconception number 3, research is about research. Here's another secret that will make you more competitive with less effort. Every pre-med should look for a clinical research opportunity. Why? Because not only are you working directly with patients, you're also getting more publications than your average basic science research. Working with a mouse that takes 4 years to get a project underway. That's at least what I thought. Then I joined a clinical research team studying normal pressure hydrocephalus, and I sucked so badly, they kicked me off of the team and I got nothing from it. That's when I learned that research isn't really about research or publications.
One of the great things that research tells us is something about your intellectual curiosity. So that's why I say like loads of different types of research are possible and will give us that message.
So it doesn't have to be neurobiology, basic science research. It can be a public health project where you're looking at how a new food program affects diabetes incidence in the community.
We don't want you to do research because we're trying to see how likely you are to become a Nobel Prize winner. Like that's not the thing. We're just trying to see other things like, are you curious? Are you persistent? Can you work in a team?
Ironically, it will be that pre-med who is really productive with their research, who will come across as curious, persistent, and a team player. And that's because excellence in research requires all of those skills anyway. So research isn't really about your publications or your impact factor. It's a vehicle to learn about your character. So choose an opportunity where you will be at your best and you're surrounded by the strongest mentors. Misconception number 4, what you write matters. I wanted to be a doctor because I love science and I love helping people. But every one of the other 50,000 pre-meds wrote some version of the exact same thing. So it must be that what I wrote didn't matter. Then what did?
One of the most important things you need to make sure is that you can back it up. You have a relevant experience, so they know that you're not just saying that, but that you're really proving it.
What matters is the evidence that you've built over the last 3+ years as a pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor because I loved the teaching, mentorship, partnership that doctors had with their patients. And so wouldn't it be odd if I said that, but there was nothing on my application that had anything to do with teaching or mentorship? This proof and the connection between different parts of your application are so important that the former Dean of Admissions at Johns Hopkins has a system to connect all the dots.
You know, one of the things I try to draw a red pen, figuratively speaking, not literally, and I can see the connections. And they should all come together.
Your letters should say one thing. Your extracurriculars should scream that same thing. Your personal statement should shout that same thing, all in concordance. Now, the number one mistake pre-meds make is they put their application together haphazardly. You have a bunch of checklist extracurriculars and you hope that writing somehow can connect all the dots. But you can't fix that. You'll never be able to put together puzzle pieces that weren't designed to fit together in the first place. And if you want even more proof that this is real, take a look at reapplicants.
The thing that doesn't work that well is doing nothing. The applicant who thinks that the only problem with their application is that they were maybe too late. It's a little bit of magical thinking. They conclude that they just needed to write something different in their essay. And so their plan for reapplication is to fix their essay. That usually doesn't work very well.
Anyone can write. It takes 3 months, but not everyone can build a cohesive thematic application. That takes 3 years, and the difference in competitiveness is crystal clear. Misconception number 5, there's a right answer. If you're serious about being pre-med, I promise you'll see this pattern again and again. That research is not at all about research. That this thing has a deeper layer of meaning as to why it is important. Here's another example from an interview setting.
That's probably the hardest part of our job, actually, because honestly, most of the people that make it to the interview stage are competent and pretty polished. I think a lot of people have a sense of like what the right thing is that they're supposed to say. And so I am always trying to, in the interview, ask questions that really get at who the person is.
It's like there's this game within the game.
And one thing that we do sometimes is I will push back on people's answers a little bit. Okay, so here's an example. I sometimes ask the question, what's your Achilles heel? And a lot of pretty sophisticated medical school applicants will quick do some thinking in their subconscious and be like, this is the time for me to talk about my weakness. I have prepared this. And then they give me some super annoying weakness like, well, I tend to take on too much responsibility, or like, sometimes I'm kind of a perfectionist. Anyway, so my response to that is sometimes to say, no, I'm sorry, I reject that answer. It's too boring.
As you can see, the literal interview question they're asking you is not the question that they want you to answer. And we know that because premeds notoriously take on too much responsibility. That is a very reasonable answer to what is your Achilles heel.
What I really am looking for is how do they respond to my feedback? Like when I say, nah, not good enough, do they like freak out, get nervous? Do they get mad at me? Do they get defensive? Or are they able to say, okay, I see what you mean. All right, let me think about this.
So she asks about your weaknesses, not to actually know about your weaknesses, but to test how mature you are when she pushes back on your answer. The meta learning point here is that you will come across a checklist of things that you have to do. Clinical experience, community service, research, and those things are all true, but you have to understand why they are important. You must understand the game within the game. And medical school admissions is a complicated game. And we can only learn how to best play the game through AdComs themselves. And this is a game you only want to play one time. So if you liked this video, you'll love this one where AdComs share what stands out and what doesn't. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.